Good afternoon, everybody. It is so good to be back here on this stage. I want to introduce Joanna Patterson, Vice President of Sales APAC at Etihad Airways. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks
Hello.
for coming. You didn't have to go very far, right?
No,
You're
I
based
live
here
here.
in Singapore?
I am. I'm very lucky.
Yeah. So
Very.
you joined Etihad during the pandemic?
I did.
Yeah?
In the middle of the pandemic.
It was probably not a very pleasant place to work for a while.
So it was. You mean working in Singapore? Or
Well,
just
working
in
during the
industry?
pandemic.
Amazingly, we were very, very busy.
Yeah.
Because despite the fact that most people couldn't travel, it meant those who could travel, we had to go after them and find ways of attracting them. And at the same time, it was a extremely busy time, I would say, because it was a good moment to sort of reinvent ourselves internally and how can we improve and be ready for when the pandemic is over, I would say.
And now you have more customers than there are seats, right?
Yes, good problem to have. It's a challenge, though, because that means, you know, when we have our clients, our corporate clients, trade clients saying, look, we have groups, we have business, and we're like, come back in June. Flights are full, and, you know, they've been talking about the whole revenge travel, pent-up demand, and we're still in the middle of it. I mean, there's no doubt people are continuing to travel. And it's mainly still, I would say, leisure, VFR. Corporates have started to come back, but more slowly than, I think, the individuals who, although this part of the world roughly opened second half of last year, between April and June, they're still catching up on, I think, missed time with friends and family. And rather than buying a new car, despite the flight cost and the hotel cost, they're traveling. That's really where they're putting their money forward.
So typically in the airline industry, as you raise the cost, you then have fewer customers. But are you finding at Etihad right now, because there's so much pent-up demand, and when you raise the cost, raise it, are the customers still coming?
Yes.
Yes.
They are, because our flights are full. Our fares, like all airlines, are fairly high because of, you know, fuel volatility and simply getting back to profitability. But people are still flying. That's not stopping at the moment. And at the moment, for, I think, a traveler, whether you're corporate or a leisure person, it's about finding a seat. It's not about just going for the cheapest available. It's about, okay, if I need to travel on that day to that place, who actually has availability, because the capacity is still not at the level where it was. So there's so much restricted capacity still around the world and in this part of the world that the demand is just above what we can actually deliver.
And this is across all cabins?
It's easier to find an economy seat than a business class seat, incredibly enough. Although, for the price you're paying in economy, you think you'll be turning left when you actually enter the plane, but no, you're still turning right, for sure. It will change. It will definitely change because capacity is coming back. Airlines are definitely ramping up capacity. We are, you know, we're starting new routes and going from daily to double daily in certain destinations. But we're absolutely not where we were pre-pandemic. And I mean, the big one that was missing in terms of capacity, let's talk about it, is China. Yeah. And they've only just really opened earlier this year. So the Chinese airlines are going to bring back capacity into the market. And when that happens, combined with those who have been flying internationally, eventually there will be a shift in demand versus supply and therefore also in fares.
How long is it going to take, in your opinion, for China to come back?
Right now, they're getting ready, I would say. It's not going to be overnight because of different reasons. One is a lot of them don't have valid passports at the moment. They need visas, and the time for that, actually, to apply for a passport, for visas, is much longer than it was before, simply because of the number of people going into those into the queue, even to get a visa for me. I'm going to China, well, I'm hoping I'm going to China next month. And we're going for an express request for a visa. The first appointment they can give me is in April. And we applied a week ago, and I want to go end of March. So if you just think about that, and then there's the whole travel sentiment as well. People were like, oh my God, we're finally open, China's open, let's all travel. And then the reality is a lot has still, what does it mean? Do I feel comfortable in traveling? And it's been very different from market to market. When Australia opened, the flights were full. When Singapore opened, everybody was traveling. Korea the same. But if you have a look at the different markets at the time they opened, how quick actually travel went up was very different. Japan is a very good example where we thought when Japan opened, and they opened in Q4 last year, we thought they would follow the same trend as Korea, for example, or Singapore, and they didn't. They were much more cautious in traveling. It was very good from a inbound, people coming to Japan and traveling in. But the Japanese going out was at a very different pace, a very slow pace, because the government incentivized domestic travel, and they do have a beautiful country and they can travel domestically, whereas in Singapore, after 2.5 years stuck on the island, you can count every palm tree. So you do travel. And also, I mean, the yen versus the dollar and things like that have really had an impact. And second half is probably when we'll see much more, I think, travelers from Northern Asia, from China, from Japan, back out there.
So you think the Japanese apprehension about traveling outbound is temporary?
I think in the second half of the year, it's definitely going to pick up again. We're seeing it right now. I was in Japan a few weeks ago talking to some very big corporates and trade partners, and they've all said, from a leisure perspective, the Japanese have now sort of spent their vouchers on domestic travel. Therefore, they're now looking at finally traveling out in groups where they feel secured in a group because they're surrounded by numbers in case something goes wrong. But they are now ready, so that's going to be the second half. China, as soon as the Chinese airlines reopen their long-haul flights, and they're planning at the moment, the good thing is they never really stopped flying. They just changed all their long-haul flights into domestic flights and kept the flights operating, kept the crew going, the captains going. Whereas if you think, so they're ready to just switch. Whereas if you think about, us and other, airlines, we've all grounded aircrafts, made redundancies around the world, and we're still actually, struggling in bringing back capacity because of the lack of aircrafts and of crew. And yesterday on the panel, they were talking about the challenges. Was it a challenge because Airbus or Boeing weren't delivering on time? It's not just that. It's around the maintenance part. It's getting aircrafts maintained and out of the desert, and you can't just go and switch on the key and change the oil. It's not like a car, so it's months of work. It's like our A380s are coming back this summer, and it's 6 to 9 months work to bring it back into service. And then you have to retrain your crew and your pilots. But that's very exciting because the good thing is it's all around expansion and growth now, rather than closing down.
What does point of sale look like now for Etihad in Asia Pacific? I mean, are you selling a lot of tickets on this side, or is it Europeans who are coming here, or people from the Middle East who are coming here? How does it work?
It's a mix, I would say. Depending on the markets, I would say probably more around the 60% is from our markets, going either to the Middle East or via Abu Dhabi to Europe, to the US. Because if you think of Abu Dhabi as a hub, it's actually a very good connector, west and east, because you're like 8 hours flight, 7 hours flights that way, and the same this way, unless you're going to Australia, which is a much, an ultra long haul. If you think of a country like Thailand, not just for us, but Thailand in general, is really an inbound. You have a lot of tourists coming from the US, from Europe, from all over the world to Thailand specifically. So that's a different point of sale shift. But the rest is actually a fair share on our responsibility to make sure we fill those planes.
So it sounds like things are going very well for Etihad and all airlines now. You can fill the seats at great prices. That's wonderful. You are, of course, a salesperson. Corporates has been the name of the game for a full-service airline historically. The corporates coming back, like what are you planning for?
Yeah, corporates are definitely coming back. So there's no doubt. It took slower than expected. And there's two challenges, I would say, from a corporate perspective. They want to travel. They need to travel to be back in front of their clients. However, they have also proven that they could do business with less travel. And so CFOs have big focuses on budgets, and negotiating with your CFO in a corporate environment as why you need so much more budget to travel is an area where they really have to think twice whether one person travels or 3 people travel, and whether they go once a month or once a quarter. The other challenge is for the corporates who are lucky enough to travel in business, in premium, is they tend to book very last minute. And our premium seats are taken by leisure passengers at the moment who are paying much more than they used to, and they haven't traveled for so long that they want the comfort and the luxury, and maybe believe that because there's more space around them from clearly when they were thinking pandemic, they felt more comfortable than being stuck at the back with, rows of 3s and everybody's touching each other. So the challenge for the corporates is really now planning ahead and making sure they get those seats before you go on holiday and you book it.
Has the phrase bleisure made it into your world?
So bleisure, workations, I mean, these are definitely, absolutely happening.
Can you measure it? Do you know what the traveler is doing? Do you know that I've come to Singapore half on vacation, half on business?
It depends if you've booked it through our own channels, where we can see that your email address might be linked to a corporate and you've been traveling with people with the same surname, so we do have a lot of data. Whether we're 100% accurate in what bleisure is, I don't know. No, absolutely not. I think it's more our trade partners who, instead of just booking for, a corporate employee, they're booking the corporate employee with the family, and then they have that data that when they were having our reviews with them and talking with them, it's like, okay, how do we manage that? Because they're on a corporate fare, and we need different channel or different fares and different flexibilities if they're taking their family. Or you have the younger generation who just go and sit in Bali with their laptop and they're working from there for the next 3 months, because that definitely happens. But they're the one who book on us. And we actually maybe not know, we might not know that they're actually working there. We see it more as a long trip. And, but definitely, the digital nomads are absolutely growing.
I think that in this industry, never is always a very long time. But do you think we'll ever get back to the business demand that we saw in 2019?
From a corporate perspective?
From a corporate perspective.
It might be different. I think in terms of demand in general, yes. The business and pure corporate business, I think, changes and evolves. Because they have invested a lot also in their technology. We work on Teams, we work on Zoom, but a lot have actually in the pandemic really invested in those super intense technology where you have a screen and you really have the feeling that you're next to the person that you're having a meeting with who might be sat in New York and I'm sat in Singapore. So I think that will definitely have an effect in corporate business. At the end of the day, if you are growing your business, it doesn't matter how good your technology is. You still need the interaction with people. I mean, look at the last few days. Catching up with new and old industry friends. Virtual calls and virtual meetings are not going to get the signature on the dotted line. Are not going to get the business moving. And I think it's definitely going to grow back to 2019. Maybe not. Maybe in a different way.
What about onboard product? Etihad has been known in the recent history as just having a really excellent onboard product. But in a world where at least premium leisure demand is so high, does your product move the needle for you, or are people just treating an air seat like a commodity these days?
I think there's both. I think it's a mix. Most airlines nowadays, full flag airlines, all have good products, all have similar products. So it's what do we do and what are we going to do in the future to make a difference so that the whole experience attracts travelers to us, not just the seat, not just the food, but I would say the whole experience from the moment you book, from your app, from the technology around it, because people are tech savvy. And if it doesn't work at the moment of using your app to check in online and upgrading with miles or booking a special food, this is more detractive than not having maybe the last business class seat or the last economy class seat, for sure. So, we are changing. We're changing our products. We're improving. We just launched a new business class product. We're looking at our economy because we really believe that we invest as airlines. We often invest a lot in the front, in first and in business. However, a lot of the travelers are actually sat at the back. And what can we do different now to really support, I think, a better experience from an economy perspective as well.
Thank you so much for this discussion, Joanna.
You're welcome.
It was great. It's good to see you in person.
Thank you,
on the
rather than
screen.
virtual. Absolutely.
Yes.
Thank you very
so
much.
much.
Bye-bye.